Good afternoon. Apologies for the slight technical glitch. We're starting a bit late, but better late than never. Welcome to episode one of the Chlorophyll podcast, scheduled to celebrate the 25th anniversary year of Chlorophyll. Today, we have the privilege, and it is my pride to learn once more from Hemant Jalan, founder and managing director of Indigo Paints. Hemant is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur, Stanford University, and the Chicago Booth School of Business. Uh, while Indigo Paints has been a client of Chlorophylls, Hemant is a friend, and the reason why is very simple. I admire his adamantine fairness, candidness, an incredible sense of humor, and a very addictive, childlike laugh. Hemant, you want to demonstrate?
Now that you make me self-conscious, I'll cry rather than laugh. You have to crack a dirty joke to make me laugh at this stage, which you'd rather not do.
Correct. We are on family business. Hemant, we have been together since 2011 when you started with us. You were 35 crores. Today you are 35 times that, and including an incredibly oversubscribed IPO. And the way I look at it is the cornerstone of all of this is innovation, right from the brand line, which is be surprised, to every single aspect of business. I have watched you in amazement as you create newer and newer ways of doing things. Uh, Please tell us about everything, the way you have dealt with dealers, the way you have dealt with your employees, the way you have tested your products, all of that. Please.
So, Kiran, there are various aspects of innovation. You innovate on products to begin with.
Right.
You innovate on your go-to-market strategy as to
Okay.
how do you expand your footprint and grow. You innovate on various aspects of services that you render. You also can innovate on, like I think what we have done on our choice of brand ambassador.
Yes.
Uh, Start with products. Now, I think each aspect of innovation has its genesis in a different sphere altogether. And
Okay.
the ideas for innovation emanate differently for different classes of innovation.
Interesting.
When it comes to products and the basic way in which you interact with your clients, and in our case, our customers are the paint dealers across India, and we have maybe 20,000 of them at this point in time. I have been a firm believer that the genesis of any innovative idea always comes from the lowest rung. If you
Interesting.
are not, I mean, it is the lowest rung, that the groundwork, the junior most salesperson who is the most in contact with the market,
Hmm.
the
Right.
customer, the dealer, his staff, etc. And that is where the idea for a product innovation has always emanated in this company.
Fantastic.
How can we, sitting in a head office, decide what product the consumer wants? We are not in daily touch with our consumer and cannot pretend to be. And it is the layperson who is out on the street 25 days in a month. And for a good 6 hours, he's meeting dealers. He's not just interacting with the owner of the dealer shop, but perhaps also interacting with the staff there who are more in contact with the end customer.
Hmm.
It is the same junior most person who's also in contact with the influencers in our business, which are the painters and the painting
Interest.
contractors. So ideas have to come from there.
Fantastic.
Now, what you need to do is that you need a method of communication in the company so
Hmm.
that the person at the top, or let's say the top management team, can regularly have a free and frank dialogue with the junior most person.
Okay.
Only then will those ideas go to the top in an unfiltered manner.
Correct. Correct.
Now, it is a very easy thing to say, but it is a very difficult thing to enact, because traditionally companies have various levels and hierarchies, built into them. So in most companies, the junior most person does not get to interact with the senior most person directly.
Hmm.
And if they do meet once in a few years in a large gathering, the person does not have the freedom to fearlessly air his or her idea,
Yeah.
for fear of being shot down by some senior along the way.
Correct.
And
Correct.
therefore, all these brilliant ideas get killed. Now, as we started this innovation journey, because when we were small, there were no zero hierarchies, and I had to interact directly with the sales force uh, many times a month and spend a full day with the sales force at each location. And when you spend a whole day and the person realizes that they can air their views or ideas in a fearless manner, it is not necessary that you take all of their ideas. But sometimes, more often than not, you see the genesis of a very nice idea coming, which initially sounds bizarre.
Hmm.
And all innovative ideas for products that have come have initially sounded bizarre. But when you sleep over it for a day or two, you realize that there is some method in that madness, and maybe that idea is not so bad after all. Now,
Any example comes to mind
yeah,
quickly,
sure,
Hemant?
many. Uh, we were the first to launch floor coat emulsion.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We were also the first to launch a special paint for the ceiling.
Yes. I remember.
I remember the ceiling coat probably came a year before the floor coat. And it was again a very junior sales officer in one part of the company
Hmm.
who found that there was a particular dealer who was selling a paint for the ceiling which was not intended for the ceiling. But
Uh-huh.
he at his shop was tinting it with some little ultramarine blue or something. And he
Yes.
found that there was a huge requirement for that. So that is when one understood that, the ceiling needs to be treated differently than a wall.
The fifth wall.
And if
Yes.
you can come up with a proper paint, after that it goes on to your R&D to dissect the genesis of that idea and see what is that different thing that the customer is looking for, and to come up with a comparative, a paint offering, and to test it out actually in the market as to whether it is meeting the needs of that particular dealer. And if it does, then you expand it over a wider
Yes.
canvas.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
also with floor coat, uh, there were ideas coming from the sales force that people are using our exterior emulsions to paint the driveway, which was not an intended use of the product,
I see. I
but they
see.
were doing it and it was not lasting. So at least you realize that there was a need, and one had never imagined that a person would want to paint his or her driveway.
Private. Yes.
You
Yes.
always think of it as a cemented surface requiring no paint. But apparently, there was a great need for a large section of people to paint that driveway and make it very colorful.
Hmm. Hmm.
So then it becomes a challenge to produce that kind of a paint, which I think is the lesser challenge. Always the greater challenge is to come up with the bright idea.
Hmm. Based on the
And
need. Yeah.
based on the need, and that idea will always come from the customer.
Correct.
The
Correct. Correct.
customer directly or indirectly will voice an unmet need,
Hmm.
and somebody in your sales force will pick it up.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And you need that flow of information from the junior level to the highest level in an unfiltered manner.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
after some many of these path breaking ideas came, and they came at a time when we were very small and there were no natural filters in the flow of information. We
Hmm.
decided to institutionalize it as we grew bigger.
Fantastic.
So once a year now we have a company sales conference in which the entire sales force gets together in a different part of India for 3 days. And a lot of session time is devoted to getting feedback and ideas from people. And people by now have learned that even if they give a bizarre idea, they will not be upbraided for it or scolded for it. At
Hmm.
worst, that idea may be rejected. But we get a lot of great ideas from these gatherings. And even though we have become, as you said, 35, 40 times larger than what we were when we started out with you,
Right.
we still maintain that, shall I say, a guiding principle
Hmm. Hmm.
that every year for every region of mine, and we now have about 55 regions across India,
Wow.
I will spend a full day with the entire sales force at least once a year,
Fantastic.
in addition to the time that we spend in a group conference. And our chief operating officer will also spend similarly a single day with every region staff at a different time in the year, so that a lot of ideas keep flowing in.
Yeah.
So I think that when it comes to product and service related ideas, they emanate from the
Hmm.
bottom.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some other kind of ideas can emanate from independent directors in the boardroom. And I think you have to be very respectful and, you know, cognizant of their views, because they are both an insider in the company and yet not too involved in the company.
Correct.
So
Correct. Correct.
sometimes they come up with excellent ideas by looking and, you know, watching the company quarter by quarter. And the innovation that we did in the tinting machine,
Right.
where we embedded it with a computer, no other company has done that. Now, that idea came from one of the independent directors, that can we
Wow.
not innovate? Why do we need a separate computer to power it? You know, can we not do something unusual? And that idea was immediately picked up and made operational within a few months.
Fantastic.
Certain other things like brand
Even
ambassador, I think that came from within. I think we had been in conversation with you for a long time. And
how to
I
choose.
remember that you were opposed in principle to the idea of a brand ambassador for valid reasons.
Yes. Yes.
But I somehow felt that when we were competing against giant companies much larger than ourselves,
Correct. Correct.
a brand ambassador was required to elevate our perceived status in the minds of the consumer.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And but I was always grappling with the problem: do I do what everyone else does to hire a Bollywood star? And you know, half of our sales came from southern India, where most Bollywood
Yeah.
stars don't have much of a fan following.
Correct.
And the answer is now, in hindsight, very simple, but it took a long time to zone in on the name of MS Dhoni, that there is a person who has a pan India
Correct.
appeal which transcends
Yeah.
language barriers. And the moment we voiced it to you, you endorsed it wholeheartedly. And
Absolutely.
we have been with that man for 6 years, and he's been wonderful to the brand.
Absolutely.
So, yeah,
And
I
he's
mean, these
grown
are
into
some
a
examples that I can think of on innovation
yeah.
that we have
Even
done.
Hemant, you did something very radical in your relationship with dealers. Remember the whole idea of replicating ESOPs, something like that you did, right? When with the dealers?
Uh, well, yeah, not quite ESOPs because it is not legally permissible.
Correct. Correct.
But
Correct.
you remember, you were part of that think tank that happened
Innovation
five,
dash.
6 years
Yeah.
ago, 5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. It happened in
Yeah.
April of 2019,
Correct.
where
Correct.
we had
That
many people
innovation
at our
dash.
head office and some people from our branches across levels do a full
Correct.
day of
Correct.
brainstorming as to what we could do different to retain our larger dealers. And that is where the idea came of a long term loyalty program spread over 4
Hmm.
years,
Yeah.
similar to our ESOP plan, where we vest completely over a 4 year period.
I see.
And
I
we
see.
launched that immediately, and it has been extremely successful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite radical.
And we have now, taken the qualifying mark a little lower,
Okay.
so that mid-sized dealers also get to enjoy a 4 year
Participate.
loyalty program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, that is another innovation that the company has done in its dealing with the customer. Yeah.
Hemant, one more area where I found your innovation again very radical, and that is in hiring. You do not
Yes.
hire laterals, you hire only freshers. In fact, the last time we were here in Pune, this boy had just finished his exam in college and he had come and joined your office. You had said, don't wait for the results to come. What is the thinking behind that? What is the thinking behind taking youngsters, giving them disproportionate responsibility, and then let them run the business?
For this, I have to publicly acknowledge the contribution of somebody who's been a guide to me in this journey, and that was my ex-employer, Mr. Anil Agarwal, the chairman of Vedanta.
I
Uh,
see.
I had the pleasure of working in his organization for 3 years from 1996 to 99 in a very senior role when we were setting up the copper smelter in Tamil Nadu.
Right.
And I think this idea was his. And all of us in the company at that time would think that it was a harebrained idea.
Hmm.
But he always felt that you do not need too many people with experience to run a large unit.
I see. I see.
And his standard answer was that तुम्हारे जैसे experienced आदमी हमको 8-10 से ज़्यादा नहीं चाहिए. And his mandate was that whatever engineers you need, you go to the campus and hire them fresh. If you need MBAs, you go to MBA colleges and hire them fresh. And if you need chartered accountants, you hire chartered accountants who have just qualified. If they have worked even 6 months elsewhere, they were disqualified.
Oh, wow.
Now,
That's
he used to say कि, उनका culture खराब हो गया है. What he meant was that, a person in the course of work experience gathers a lot of unnecessary mental baggage,
hmm.
which is a function of the company that they have worked for. And
Hmm.
many companies do run by old school methods or have some old school habits ingrained inside them.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they become a liability rather than the asset.
That's it. Yeah.
And he felt that you take young people, give them on the job training, and his company at that time had no HR function. So he used
Oh.
to say line managers are the HR managers of your team. I'm sure they have changed over time as they have become a very giant company.
Hmm.
But that
Hmm.
was the underlying philosophy. And he used to say, give a person on job training for 3-4 months and then push him into the deep end of the pool. Give him a level of responsibility that he or she cannot enjoy for another 15 years.
Hmm.
And to quote his words, he would say, या तो डूब जाएगा या तैर जाएगा और देखना 95% तैर करके निकलेंगे.
Hmm. Yeah.
It was a very scary thing at that time. You're running a copper smelter
Yeah.
where it's a hazardous operation. You're dealing with hot metal, and you're
Hmm.
putting engineers to man the various sections who have just passed out of college and work for 3-4 months in your organization. We did it not because we were convinced about it, but because we had no other option.
Hmm.
That was mandated from the top.
Yeah.
Having experienced that for a few years, I think one realized the beauty of it.
I see.
That it is such a joy to work with young people. And it is only in our heads that, only experienced people can do this role or that role, which I think
Hmm.
is a bunch of nonsense
Hmm.
now.
Hmm.
And these people come with fire in their belly. They
Yeah.
get a level of responsibility, which, they're always judging themselves in their career path by talking to their peers who graduated from college
Correct.
along with them.
Correct.
And very
Correct.
soon they realize that the level of responsibility that they are handling is infinitely greater than what their peers are getting.
Yeah.
And level of responsibility is a great addictive force.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful.
And sometimes we have had people who have been attracted by higher packages elsewhere and have left the organization and gone because this was their first job. They don't know what the culture elsewhere is,
Correct. Correct. Correct.
and they assume that everywhere it is going to be the same.
Correct.
It is only when they work elsewhere for 6 months do they realize that there is a huge value to the culture in the organization that they were working with at Indigo. And
Yes.
many times they come back and say that I made a mistake and can you take me back? So,
Wow.
generally, people, most good performers I have found, value this responsibility, they enjoy it, And of course, over time, they get compensated disproportionately. But as you know, money is rarely the reason
Yeah,
why a
absolutely.
person leaves the job.
Absolutely.
So if they are happy and they are empowered, and I think they do a much better job.
Yeah, yeah. Happiness, pride, those are the things that keeps people in the organization. So that youngster idea that leads me, Hemant, to my next question. I have this hypothesis called MDM and KDM, which means manufacturing era decision making and knowledge era decision making. So in the manufacturing era, you bought tangible assets. So you had this pyramidal structure. At the bottom, somebody made a list, the next one curated it, the next one added, what was socially right, etc., and then the CEO made a decision. But today we are buying intangible assets, we are buying ideas. And to me, you are the epitome of KDM, because every single idea has gone straight to you, just as you don't allow within your organization ideas to not get filtered. Even for us, the great joy has been that we don't go through these hoops. Whatever we present directly to you. Now, is that instinctive, or you learnt about it somewhere?
Well,
Because
it's
that's
somewhere
an
connected with your
extremely.
previous question. First of all, we don't have so many hoops in the organization.
Hmm.
So
No,
those hoops
even
don't
if you,
exist.
no, Hemant, I'm saying, even if you say I have a marketing manager, even that doesn't happen. We are dealing directly with the whole team, which I
Yeah, with the
think.
whole team. You're not dealing only
Yes,
with me because that would be
correct,
fallacious also.
correct, correct,
So the
correct,
whole team is present, and whenever you have brought an idea or a presentation,
correct,
before I respond to it, I always ask the team for their inputs because I
correct,
value that.
correct, correct,
I'm getting the bottom up approach of everyone together as
correct,
to what do they feel about it. And after I've heard them out, I will present my views, which may match with theirs, it may not
correct,
match with theirs. And
correct.
then we have a healthy discussion. And
Yes,
you would have noticed over your 12-year association that there is no ego involved in the discussion. If a
absolutely.
junior person makes a point strongly and
Yes,
contradicts me, I'm perfectly willing to accept it and say, fine, this looks like a better idea. Let's go do it this way.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I think that collaborative approach is very much required. And going through hoops and making presentations at different levels, again, you will encounter that filters that will come in, or
Absolutely.
people will knowingly or unknowingly nudge you to say ki don't say this or emphasize this more because it may match their belief or thinking.
Yes,
It
yes,
may still be in their thoughts the best thing for the organization, but it's not a good thing if ideas are going after filtration to the
yeah,
top. They should go in the raw form, and then you judge,
yeah,
with everyone's opinion as to what is good and what is not. Now,
yeah.
even today, every month, on the first of every month, we have a 2 hour Zoom call with all our region heads. So about 55, 60 people on the call.
Fantastic.
Now, today, or very recently, if you remember, we were discussing the launch of a very new revolutionary kind of a paint,
Product. Yes,
which I will
yes.
not elaborate on further at this stage.
Correct.
But how to do that launch, how to communicate the benefits of it, just came out of that Zoom call by some branch head in some part of India. And everyone lushed onto it, and it was a brilliant idea, which you yourself admitted
Correct.
as to how to
Fantastic.
present it. So I think that if you keep doing that and involving the team as low level as possible, it is always great. The other part of knowledge based decision making is data. I
Hmm.
think data is king.
Yes.
Now, I have seen myself, both within the paint industry and outside the paint industry, very, very well managed companies, so to speak, tend to imitate what the market
Hmm.
leader is doing.
Hmm.
And we have private conversations between senior people of the paint industry at various fora when we meet. And I'm dismayed that many people are always saying, because the market leader is doing this, we must do this.
Hmm.
Now, I always have two problems with that approach. A, somebody in the largest organization may have taken a wrong decision for
Correct.
whatever reasons, and
Correct.
you imitate a fallacy.
Correct.
And B, what is appropriate for the market leader need not be appropriate for you because you're operating in a
Mhm.
totally different orbit in
Yeah.
terms of
Correct.
size and scale.
Correct. Correct.
So, there are good things to watch and learn from your leaders. But if you keep putting the filter that, what is good for an Asian Paints or what is good for a Berger Paints need not be good for me because my
Right.
scale of operation is different.
Correct. Correct. Remember
So,
our.
yeah, so ultimately, data has to drive the decision making
Hmm.
rather than imitation. And
Remember our
very
decision
simply,
on sub
I think
brands.
it's 2011-12 when we set up SAP.
Okay.
And I recall that we were the smallest company in India to ever implement SAP.
Wow.
We were about, I forget what we were, but I think we were about 25 crores of annual turnover at that time or something
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
And even a big company like SAP was surprised as to why is a small company like us implementing SAP. Because unless you were 300, 400 crores, no one thought of it in those days.
Hmm.
But we did that because one was convinced that unless we capture data and start analyzing it,
Correct.
we're
Correct.
not going to succeed. And over time, we have invested a lot in business analytics
I see.
to
I see.
develop very high quality MIS reports, which we can dissect, laterally, horizontally, vertically, whichever way we want, and keep seeing the numbers and keep deciding our day to day decisions based on those numbers.
Fantastic. So, when you started, Hemant, as a chemical engineer who's also carrying paint cans in the second class compartment of a train and thinking of brand names and meeting people and trying to think about a big brand, anything strikes you that if you were to start all over again, are there things which you would do differently? I know that you are not a person who lives in the past. You're
Yeah,
thinking about the.
I'm not a person who ever thinks back कि, अगर ऐसा होता तो हम क्या करते. I
I call it
normally
the.
look back at the past because whatever is done is done. One took whatever decisions, right or wrong, at
Yeah,
various
yeah,
points in time. And one has to realize that in business, there is no human being who takes 100% correct decisions.
correct,
But if
correct.
you can take 65% correct decisions and 35% wrong ones, then you're doing pretty good. But on an overall basis, I think in the earlier part of the journey, had I listened a little more, and that's one of the most difficult skills to acquire, listening skills. They don't teach you in business
But
school.
now you're doing very well on that front.
Slightly better, slightly better. So I wish if we had listened a little more to people at the bottom and to other teammates, which we have learned to improve upon as we grew,
Correct, correct.
uh, I think we could have done a little better. But overall, no regrets at all.
We in Chlorophyll we call it the Madhuri Dixit syndrome, which means if I hadn't married my wife and if I'd waited a little longer, I could have ended up marrying Madhuri Dixit. Just hoping against hope rather than acting. Yeah. One last question, Hemant. Um, Hemant in 2000 we started. 2000
Yeah,
we started.
exactly. April
Yeah.
2000.
Yeah. April 2000. Now we are in May 2024. How has Hemant, the individual, changed? There must have been crises, there have been challenges. I definitely know that with your ironclad discipline, you vanquished diabetes from your life. Anything else that has changed you? Diabetes was not related to your profession, it was something else that had creeped in.
Well, the diabetes is slowly coming back for bad eating habits and lack of exercise during the last 6, 8 months. But
Okay.
as always, I promise to start rectifying it tomorrow.
Anything else that came up as a crisis and you said, okay, that's what has changed me? it made me listen more, it made me contemplate anything of
I
that
think
sort?
I've become a somewhat calmer person.
Okay.
I used to be a lot more volatile.
Okay.
I used to lose my temper in a much more, shall I say, violent manner. Not physically violent, but verbally violent, whether it was with colleagues in the office or even with family members. I had a
Yes.
very slow fuse, a very low fuse. I think that has changed with maybe
Time.
some personal tragedies in life have caused that to change, or
Okay.
maybe just growing up in the business have caused that to change. Uh, I'm no longer very loud and vociferous if I get angry. I can control my temper a little better than what I used to, and slightly calmer person. Otherwise, what else has changed? I've almost lost as much hair on my head as you have. So
Yes, that is true. So, Hemant, thank you very much. I have privately always thanked you for Indigo Paints relationship with Chlorophyll. It is an example of trust, faith, backing up. We have been through a lot together.
yeah,
So, time to thank you publicly. So, thank
thank you.
you.
And we have learnt a lot from our association with you.
Yes,
And
yes,
I have no hesitations in acknowledging that publicly too.
yes,
That
yes.
all those things of condensing all our brands into one brand,
Correct,
the idea to, in the earlier days, to only advertise our unique products so
correct,
that we
correct.
didn't take the industry bigwigs in head on, and
Yes,
we were more visible with lesser budgets. I mean, those were, I mean, in hindsight, they look like very simple decisions, but they were not.
yeah, yeah,
Those were major decisions that we took,
yeah, yeah.
and we took it together. And
Yes,
Chlorophyll is very much part of the Indigo family.
yes, we are. We are. Great. Thank you very much, Hemant.
Thanks.
And thank you, everybody who joined in. Stay tuned for the next episode. If you have any questions, everybody feel free to write to me on LinkedIn, and I'll make sure I respond. Whether that answer will be adequate, I do not know, but certainly I will make it attempt to answer it. Thank you, everybody. Bye
Thanks.
bye. Thank you, Hemant.
Thanks.